Well, shalom and welcome back, everybody. Today we are continuing our series on looking at the laws of Loshon Hara, that is of evil speech. And I also like to call the series Hilkot Shimorat Halashon, which means the laws of clean speech, because that's ultimately what we're trying to pursue. But we have to be aware of what constitutes evil speech. And it's not just lying. In fact, very little of what we'll look at are laws pertaining to lying. These are actually laws pertaining to telling the truth, but to telling the truth with a very bad or certainly a wrong motive. And the work that we will be going through is called Guard Your Tongue, and it was released in 1975 by Rabbi Zelig Pliskin, and he wrote this work, compiled it rather, based on the teachings of the Chofetz Chayim, which is a nickname that means the one who desires life. And there's a little picture of him down here in the corner. And he was a fairly recent sage, and he devoted quite a lot of his energy to drawing out of the Torah all the laws pertaining to speech, because it's extremely important to be able to control what we say, because we are told that we are going to have to give an account on every word that has come out of our mouths, whether we've said something seriously or said something in jest. And everything about it is comes by way of one verse in the book of Psalms by David HaMelech, and it is in Psalm 34:12 or 13, depending on your translation. And I'll read it for you here. Mi ha'esh ha'Chofetz Chayim, there we are. Hayav yamim lir'at tov netzol lashon ka mira. And in English that is, who is the man who desires life, who loves days of seeing good? Guard your tongue from evil. And so everything that we're going to be learning is all going to be focusing on the organ of the tongue, and it's an organ that's hidden, and it doesn't have any bones, and it is hidden by two walls. Actually, it's hidden by the teeth if you close your teeth, and it's hidden by your lips. Yet it can be the organ that can do us the most damage, because it can also do us the most good. Speech is intelligible speech, and speech that has been drawn from thought, prudent thought, is something that is unique quality to mankind. Even though there are other animals in the animal kingdom that can mimic speech, thought connected with speech is something that is unique to mankind. It's one of the chief things that sets us apart from the animal kingdom. So last lesson we got as far as the fourth prohibition, and I thought we would look at the prohibitions 5 through 9, prohibitions 5 through 9, and the book goes through all of the locations in the Torah where we see a law pertaining to speech. And so the next one is from Devarim 8:11, that is the book of Deuteronomy, and it says, beware lest you forget Adonai your Elohim. Beware lest you forget Adonai your Elohim. This is a prohibition against being conceited according to Tractate Sotah 5a from the Talmud. One who ridicules others is generally motivated by a feeling of superiority. So somebody who is in a place where they're ridiculing another person, they are, for starters, they obviously see them as having a level of superiority over the people that they're choosing to ridicule. If he were aware of his own faults, he surely would not deprecate others. The Talmud equates arrogance with idolatry and states that whoever has this trait will not be privileged to be resurrected in the Tikiyat Hamasim. So that's pretty heavy. That's basically saying that somebody who engages in ridicule, whether privately with another person, or publicly, or online, or over the phone, or anything like that, this person very much runs the risk of not even being eligible to be resurrected. The gravity of the transgression is increased if the speaker elevates his own esteem through the medium of degrading someone else. Our sages in Yerushalmi Hagigah 2:1 have declared that such a person will lose his share in the Olam Haba. So it's pretty crazy. Speaking poorly, speaking badly, or speaking with an evil motive is one of the most damaging things that a person can do. That's why it's connected to life, and it's also connected to death if it's misused. So number 6, you shall not profane my holy name, and this is from Vayikra, Leviticus 22:32. We are warned not to cause Kilul Hashem. What is Kilul Hashem? It means desecration of God. There are a number of aspects to this prohibition. See Rambam, Sefer HaMitzvot 63. If a person commits a transgression without deriving pleasure from it, it is considered a revolt against Hashem Yisbarak, and a Kilul Hashem. Speaking Loshon Hara is in this category. Now, why is it so bad to commit a transgression without deriving pleasure from it? It is so bad because it is a testimony to the fact that you weren't drawn away to sin by desire, by being led by desire. Rather, you were drawn to sin because you have an agenda, and that agenda is to bring the name of Hashem into ill repute. So there's 2 ways essentially a person can sin. They can sin intentionally with a desire to do something to go against the kingdom of Hashem, which is the motivation that Goliath had when he stood at the head of his army taunting the nation of Israel, which brought about a pretty bad end to him. And the other desire is the other way a person can sin is through desire, and that is they're overwhelmed by a particular enticement or something like that. And so, at least if a person sins in the second category, which is still a grave sin, they sinned by way of desire, not by way of motive that they are against Hashem. Another aspect of Kilul Hashem involved in Loshon Hara is the laxity shown towards this mitzvah. If someone was accidentally eating pork and a friend would point this out to him, he would immediately spit it out. When someone is censored for speaking Loshon Hara, however, he has 1,000 rationalizations and excuses. He will argue that what he is saying is not considered Loshon Hara, and that person he is speaking about is in the category that gives one license to speak against him. Not only will he not heed the rebuke, but he may be spurred on to increase his Loshon Hara. This total disregard for one of Elohim's mitzvot is a Kilul Hashem, and many of us have seen situations like that when somebody has had the guts to rebuke another person, and the person being rebuked reacts in a way that ends up being even worse, and they go to even more extremes. Yet another aspect of Kilul Hashem is when a distinguished person transgresses and others follow his example. Therefore, one who studies Torah has an even greater obligation than others to guard his speech. So that's exactly right. So when somebody makes it their life's mission to learn Torah and to be obedient to Hashem, they develop a set apartness from the rest of the population who chooses not to do that. And many of these people in that other bracket of society, they become aware that there's something very significantly different about that person. And though they might not agree with that person, a lot of people from the larger demographic do have an intrinsic respect for a particular person that's taken on to commit themselves to the Torah 24/7. And so when somebody like that does something or says something that is particularly bad or with a bad motive, then it is a negative advertisement for the kingdom of heaven and can do a lot of damage. And particularly if somebody's held in high regard, we have a lot of, internet rabbis floating around now. And so if one of them starts to go off the derek, off the path, that can cause a huge issue going forward. Okay, so prohibition number 7, you shall not hate your brother in your heart. Vayikra 19:12. If you act in a friendly manner towards someone in his presence, but speak against him behind his back, you violate the prohibition. This prohibition refers only to concealed hatred. When you openly tell someone about your dislike for him, you do not transgress this prohibition, but you are guilty of not fulfilling the mitzvah of loving a fellow Jew. So you shall not hate your brother in your heart. So this is somebody who dislikes a person, but will also go out of his way to show the person respect and honor, particularly in public. And so this leads to a person with two faces. And at least somebody who dislikes a person and tells them to their face, tells them to their face, at least they're having the courage to openly let them know where they stand in that person's eyes, even though it still might be a transgression and be something that's baseless, categorized as baseless hatred, which is a pretty horrific thing, which will lead in the past to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. Okay, so now we're looking at Prohibitions 8 and 9 are merged here because we have two elements in this verse, and again it's from Vayikra 19:18. You shall not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the children of your people. End of quote. Okay, so the commentary here is, if you are angry at someone because he refused to grant you some favor, and in revenge you speak Loshon Hara about him, you have violated these two prohibitions. In addition to having spoken Loshon Hara, in addition to have spoken Loshon Hara. For recalling this person's refusal to render you assistance, you are guilty of bearing a grudge. For slandering him, you are guilty of taking vengeance. Wow. You are obligated to forget the entire incident. And now there's an example here, and we'll go through it, and I thought it was a really good example. To illustrate the extent of these two prohibitions, a certain scholar related the following anecdote. Lost and wandering in a desert, Gavriel finally spotted a man leading a herd of camels. Half crazed with thirst, Gavriel crawled up to the man and begged for water. The camel owner refused and left Gavriel to the elements, and Gavriel miraculously managed to get back to civilization in a short time and become very wealthy. One day, Gavriel's secretary announced that a camel dealer was interested in obtaining a loan from him for the purpose of enlarging his stock. When the man entered Gavriel's office, Gavriel immediately recognized the face. It was the person who had refused aid to him in his hour of need. Gavriel is obligated to grant a loan without recalling the desert incident. This is true. This is a true and difficult test of Gavriel's strength of character, but it is required of him by these two mitzvot. And that's where we'll leave it today. So just looking again at the last one, you should not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the children of your people. So if somebody asks us we ask somebody if we can lend a spade or something, or some farming implement or some tool, or DIY tool, and they say no, and then 5 months later that same person comes and asks for something, maybe they want to borrow some milk or some sugar or something that you have. Are you obligated to deny their request? No, you should forget about that incident that happened way before, and you should lend them the item. And sometimes it's a very hard thing to do, because the Yetzer Hara will go, wow, now's your opportunity to get him back. And you have to fight that with all your might, because it potentially could be a huge example to the person, particularly, obviously in this example, in Guard Your Tongue, if the camel herder recognized the man. There's no indication that the camel herder recognized the man here. So that would have made it even more difficult to do, because there would be a temptation for Gavriel to show his identity to the camel herder, and that's even more of a now it's my turn sort of thing. And if the camel herder walks away from that encounter in that example, not even knowing who it was, that's even harder to do. So it's about learning to just a lot of the stuff to do with Loshon Hara is just holding your tongue, just don't say it. Okay, yeah, it's probably true what you're going to say. It's probably right, and it's probably it's spot on, but it might not be the place to say it. It might just be you exercising an act of self-righteousness, and so have a think about that when you get an opportunity to get somebody back. Just do what they've asked and lend the item to them or whatever it is. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me, and I hope that you can join me next time on our series of Loshon Hara. Thanks again. Bye now.